On the morning of the 19th, they were at a stoplight and they were hit in the rear driver's side at almost 80 miles an hour without any swerving, braking. Katie wound up dying on the scene, and a friend of hers wound up dying the next day in the hospital.
Welcome to No Border, No Country. We're joined today by Joe Abraham. Joe, you've got a story. Your daughter Katie has been in the news a lot lately. Tell us about Katie's life and who she was as a person and what happened in January, if you can.
Sure. So Katie was 20 years old. She was in her third year at Ohio University. She was probably going to head toward the marketing sort of discipline, but unfortunately, we were supposed to talk when she got back from that Urbana trip where the tragedy happened, and so we never had that chance. So on January 19th, her and a friend from this area had taken the train down to Urbana to visit three other friends. They all played water polo together. Now, this illegal alien, I think the person who killed the girls, 5 women in the car, his first instinct, and I don't care if you're drinking or not, his first instinct was not to dial 911, was not to try to hang around to help first responders to understand what might have happened or render any type of aid. I think he showed his character, and some of the people, we're a one-party state, so it's all Democrats, so it shows what the Democrats are sort of standing behind, like these other folks that they're standing behind. He turned tail and he ran.
They didn't know where he was. It's that much more difficult to comprehend. Now this person's on the loose. We don't know where he is. They suspected he was trying to flee.
In a couple of days, they got him south of Dallas, I think Milford, Texas. He wound up moving from Urbana to Chicago almost to the border. So there was money being moved around. He was being moved around. He went really quick. I don't even think I could be that quick. So that's sort of what happened in a nutshell. Now, Julio Cucul-Bol, he was here using, he's a Guatemalan national using a Mexican national alias, Juan Suarez. So here's, for example, let me just jump into that real quick. When you talk about all immigrants are the greatest people. Look, we're a family of immigrants. There are great immigrants, just like there's great citizens. But you know what? There's some bad citizens. At the same time, there's some bad immigrants. Let's not conflate this whole thing and muddy it up where only immigrants are the best things ever and they all built the country and all this other stuff you hear. No one disagrees with that. But you've got to understand that there are good and there's evil. That's it. Good and criminals. And there's no shame in trying to sort of filter some of those folks out. Now, Julio Cucul-Bol, the feds knew he was not who he said he was, Juan Suarez. But since Illinois sanctuary, they don't talk to the feds, so they just took him as Juan Suarez. They had been pulled over as well. So there's a couple of times they could have filtered this guy out, who was really not being productive, who was not really someone I think anyone should stand behind to say, yeah, this is the guy we need. This is the immigrant we need to, stand behind, and he's going to help build the nation. That isn't the case. So Katie was a terrific kid. She was so kind, compassionate. She made everyone feel seen. When she was a child, we would go to these functions and you could drop Katie in the middle of any place, any room, any situation. And she was able just to get right in there, make friends. If she saw kids that were sort of struggling to fit in, she would reach out. She would pull folks in. She had that kind of personality. And if you think of her, it's like she had so much wit, so much humor. She could read a room. She could maneuver around. She was always like I don't want to say the center, but she always made people be seen. She was always trying to get everyone engaged. She also loved the water. I think she felt more comfortable in the water than she did on land. She swam. She played water polo. And that was sort of her friend group there. It's a shame because you hear about, this is God's plan, and this is God's plan, has a plan for Katie and this, that. And this was not God's plan, right? God had greater plans for Katie, but this was Illinois politicians and federal politicians, right? The previous administration. I can't blame like President Biden. I think it's clear he was not really the guy pulling the strings, right? So the power behind the throne were putting in these policies. So Katie's life was ended by deceitful, unimpressive politicians and their policies that interfered with God's plan for Katie. So it was really that it wasn't necessarily God. This is God's plan. God's plan wasn't to have a Guatemala national using a Mexican national alias to come in. I don't know how many times. I know he was pulled over once before. I don't know how many times he was driving under the influence, but this one time he certainly killed a couple of young women, injured a third, and really, affected two others. So that's the gist of kind of Katie's story and who she was. She was just one of the greatest people. She loved music. She was would have been such a good. To me, the world is a much less interesting place without her. When you lose folks like Katie, I think those are the people you don't want to lose, right? You want those in your state, in your country.
What were you able to learn in the aftermath? Did this guy, you mentioned about drunk driving, did he have a previous record that you were aware of in the United States?
What I could say is that he was previously deported and then re-entered illegally again. I think there's got to be some laws against that. So I would think right away, that's a problem, right? That's problematic. He was also using an alias. So, that's not very honorable, right? That's not someone that is, if you think about it, previously deported. So you've got this guy that, entered the country illegally after being deported, right? So entering twice illegally, at least that we know of. Residing illegally, right? He had false documents, so he got documentation illegally. I don't even know who's helping them with all this. And things like that. So if you think about the things that, I'm not sure what J.B. Pritzker and the Illinois politicians believe, but if you have someone coming in and already breaking 3 or 4 of your laws of the country, and you think they're going to settle in and be good citizens, okay, so no consequences for any of the laws that were broken, because there are laws on the books and they just bypass them, right? So on the contrary, it wasn't even consequences, it was reward. So it wasn't even like there were any consequences for breaking these laws. He was actually rewarded for that. So in Illinois, again, that could have been one. If you were not sanctuary, that was one chance you could have filtered him out. He was pulled over before in Sanctuary Urbana, no driver's license. There was a second chance they could have filtered this guy out. Again, why we don't make a distinction between honest legal immigration and illegal immigration, and then a subset of the illegal immigration is, are they going to be productive, or try to be good citizens, or on the path that way, or are they going to be more trouble than they're worth, right? There should be no shame in saying here's this distinction between immigration itself. So we can talk about the sanctuary hearings on January 12th, Chairman Comer's committee that we were invited to. They told Katie's story. It was J.B. Pritzker, Tim Walz, and Kathy Hochul that were testifying. And I know J.B. Pritzker there conflated citizens, legal immigrants, and illegal immigrants. And again, the subset of illegal immigrants, whether they're criminal or not, everything was conflated. We were just all residents. We were just all one pool, right? I was the same as this criminal illegal. I'm the same. That's kind of what he was saying. And then he would talk about, well, if they do wrong, they will get their due process. They will be adjudicated in our judicial system in Illinois for whatever that's worth. And then that's what will happen, right? So think about, from my position here in that, right? Citizens are the same as illegal immigrants. We're all kind of one and the same. There's no difference of being a citizen and being someone who breaks laws, right? We're all the same. But I'm sitting here without a daughter now, right? On the back end. And all I was asking is set up a process on the front end, try to filter some of these folks out. And in this case, this guy wouldn't have been here. And, you could say, what was a drunk driving issue? Certainly that was part of it. But the other part of it, he shouldn't have been here. And there were a couple of chances to filter him out. And if that was the case, then we have Katie with us, which we don't now.
Well, that's the part of these sanctuary mayors and governors' logic that I find personally sickening, is that they will champion these policies that allow this lawlessness to happen. And then when someone like your daughter loses their life, they say, well, he faced justice and we're for throwing the book at these people. But the damage is done. An innocent person has lost their life already. So how can they claim to be law and order and protecting their citizens when we have things like this going on?
Yeah, Brian, you're absolutely right. That is, there's a lot of things I don't lose. I lose sleep at night. A lot of things that go through the mind. Because let's face it, Katie got a death sentence, and I got life. I've got a life sentence. That's where I'm at. That's our life right now, right? Every day I put my head on the pillow. I go to sleep with Katie. I wake up with Katie. All day long, I'm with Katie, right? But she's not with me. I have to constantly think of her, right? So these again, it's frustrating to me to hear again the hyperbolic language they talk about. And this is something that's, if you had leadership, when you talk about some of these leaders in the sanctuary, if you had any kind of leadership, for example, let me just give you one example at the hearing, oversight hearing on sanctuary policies. J.B. Pritzker did say, hey, they're going to get adjudicated and the back end, again, whatever that's worth. Like, this man took 2 young lives, women, beautiful women. He will see the light of day again. Okay, if that's justice, all right, well, then that's justice. That's I don't see it that way. But when J.B. Pritzker's talking there at the sanctuary hearings, talking about how, we have to be compassionate. These people are better than the citizens, and this, that, and the other. And I'm thinking to myself, my goodness, this is deceit. This is not wisdom. This is not leadership. Leadership would be, because he would yell at the Republican side, say, do your job, fix your border, without making the connection, unless he does make the connection, is not honest about it, which could be, doesn't make the connection that he says out to the world, anyone that shows up, regardless of status, shows up in Illinois will be protected, and not only protected, will be rewarded.
Joe, Pritzker's been all over the news lately criticizing the Trump administration for Operation Midway Blitz with the ICE operations there. DHS announced that they were doing this in honor of Katie. How did you learn about that? Had you been talking to DHS prior to that? And what does that mean to you?
Yeah, we have been talking to DHS, not around this operation, just in general. When we were at Congress in June, and we were at the White House in June as well. So we have been talking with them. So they did call me the night before. I didn't find out until the night before. They just, Sunday night, I got a call and said, hey, look, we're going to do this operation. We really would like to honor Katie. And my thought was, okay, exactly what are we doing here, right? Well, are you going to remove the criminal illegals? And they said, yes. I said, well, then I would be honored that you thought of Katie and that you want to name it, or at least in honor of Katie. So that's sort of how that came about.
Well, we did a ranking here a few years ago of the worst sanctuary mayors in America, and Brandon Johnson was #1 by a comfortable margin. So he is probably the worst in my book. But I find it interesting, too, that there's a lot in the news lately about how the city of Chicago is bankrupt and there's this huge funding gap. And I never hear Brandon Johnson or any of the city council members point to the elephant in the room, which is the fact that the city has spent millions, hundreds of millions of dollars after encouraging illegals to come to the city, and now they're in this huge financial hole, and they talk about slashing other programs and driving away the wealthy people by jacking up the taxes, but they never talk about easing up on these sanctuary policies that have been this huge financial sinkhole for the city.
Yeah, there's no doubt. It's frustrating to watch that. My understanding is, the last I saw, the state of Illinois, so I'm not sure how much is going to Chicago, but the state was spending what, $3-4 billion, the last I heard, a year, right, on this. And it's frustrating. I feel sad for Chicago because there are so many people that need help there, and all they do is cry poor. But I guess if there's certain things that help them politically, maybe they don't cry poor so much anymore. It's frustrating because, again, have you taken care of your citizens? Because if they think they have, they haven't. Then there's no leadership there. There's no reality there on their part. It's deceitful. Their citizens aren't taken care of. Can your kids write, read, and do math? No, not at all. No one can stand up and say that. That's just false. So you've got all these issues you should be handling before you think you can take on people. So that to me, you got to take care of what you've got, and then you can start. But if you're doing a bang up job, sure, keep bringing people. Will come in by not only illegals but citizens will start coming in the state. I'm sorry the state is so mismanaged that we have hundreds of thousands of citizens leaving the state. And the only way they can backfill those folks are through illegal migrants, paying them to come in, giving them all the goodies to come into the state so they can keep their apportionment to Congress, and that they can keep their federal funding, and that they somehow, I suspect, I don't have any proof, this is just Joe thinking, somehow I think votes are going to come around on this thing. So yeah, it's frustrating to watch the city cry poor, and they keep, we're going to be on the hook for this too, by the way, Brian. I mean, let's face it, at the end of the day, when you're talking unfunded pensions and everything else that goes with the city, and we already pay, they talk about corporations gouging, energy company. These are the biggest gougers I've ever seen in my life. They never look in the mirror and say, am I gouging my citizens? Because we're being gouged. And I don't know about anyone else. I don't think I'm getting anything back for the exorbitant amount of taxes I pay every year at every level. So it's unfortunate. Nothing's being taken care of in this state. And you think you can just bring in new arrivals. You can't even handle the people you got. And now you're bringing in. So there's got to be another underlying reason for that.
Right. So, Joe, in June, there was an event at the White House, and I happened to be in the audience for it. And President Trump had you on the stage and called you up, and I believe you gave him a photo of you and Katie. I was curious, what was your interaction with the president like?
He looked at me, he looked me in the eye, and he said things basically were out of control, and that they're going to get this cleaned up for the sake of kids like Katie. So he seemed very authentic, very sincere. Even after the event, when he walked over and shook my hand and had his hand on my shoulder and, again, looked me in the eye, something J.B. Pritzker couldn't even muster up anything to do on that. At least he could do that. Now, people will say, oh, Trump is leveraging, because I hear things all the time. We're in a very blue area here. So people will say, well, Trump is using you. I'm like, okay, well, maybe that's true, but maybe he's leveraging us, and maybe we're leveraging him a little bit to bring this out, these awful policies that, doesn't have to be one or the other. There's some middle ground you could have done. And maybe we ought to bring that up. And maybe this is why it's beneficial for us to talk to anyone who will listen to us, to hear our stories and let people know that this could have been avoided. No one has to suffer like this. I mean, this is clearly a life sentence for us. It's awful. It's painful every day. And he acknowledged that, President Trump. So I was very appreciative of that.
Yeah, I spoke with Patty Morin recently. She lost her daughter, Rachel, to an illegal alien crime. And she had several interactions with President Trump and echoed the same sentiments, that he really seems to care and he treats them on a personal basis. And it really affects him that he wants to clean this up. But even with all the work he's doing, we just had a story this morning from our friends at Border Hawk News. There was a 16-year-old girl in New York City killed in a similar circumstance with a vehicle crash from an illegal alien. So as much work as the administration's doing, the last 4 years have created so much backlog, it's going to take a while to clean this up.
I agree. And that was one of the things I kept harping about. Why isn't there some type of front-end process in these states? And I'm just going to speak for state of Illinois, because I did read that story, just horrific. But if I just think of my state, right? Here we are, we're productive, we did all the right things, we're productive, we're hardworking, we raised a solid family, we're law-abiding, we pay our tax, we do everything the right way. And then what did we get in return? Because really, if you think about it, there's got to be some kind of social bargain or agreement unwritten that says you do the right things. And, rule one for us as your government is we will keep you safe. We will have deterrence. So people aren't just the Wild West out there. And you can trust that your child can go out and be safe. And they failed miserably on that. I mean, clearly. And again, it's not just Katie, but I'm just speaking from Katie. They failed us. We did everything right. She got death. I got a life sentence. That's not okay.
Joe, anything else you want to say in closing?
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to say is I don't know where we as a country or as a state have lost so much of our values that we think I don't even know what it is. Do we think that we shouldn't have to audit anyone, that there's something wrong with us, that we are demanding that anyone and everyone just comes in, it doesn't matter? And then the other thing I'm thinking is, why, if their intention is, right, they love migrants and they want to bring in migrants, and if they would have done it the right way, they could have had that outcome, right? And their policies and what they put in place has done the opposite effect, right? Most of the country doesn't want this now. And I'm not okay with that. That's not the right way to do it. But you've created this awful environment that people are just not on board anymore, that migrants, we should deport, we should, limit. Just understand what you're trying to do and set up a process to do it the proper way in an orderly fashion. There should, again, be no shame in doing that. Because if your effect is you want more migrants, your policies have done the opposite. So I'm so tired of the incompetence and the incoherence of policies. I just want someone in here that can get things done the right way and not only political. So, I mean, I'm sure I shouldn't hold my breath on that, but it's just unfortunate that we don't look at the effects. We only look at the intentions. Good intentions. You know what they say about good intentions. What are your effects? And I think the effects are failing, and they're failing on that. So that's why you see, I think, a lot of howling about what ICE is doing and what President Trump's trying to do to clean some of this stuff out.
Yeah, it's important for us to continue to tell Katie's story. We want change to happen so that other families don't have to deal with this.
Joe, you have shown incredible strength and bravery being out there talking about this like you are. So just know that you and your family are in our thoughts and prayers, and please come back anytime.
I appreciate it. Appreciate you guys reaching out. Anytime you want to connect again, I'd be happy to do it.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. And thanks again to Joe Abraham for joining us to tell his daughter Katie's heartbreaking story. To see how FAIR is active in supporting angel families like Joe's and Patty Morin's, visit fairus.org. Follow our social media channels under the handle FAIR Immigration and see how you can get involved as well.